Welcome to Uncanny X-Minutes, where we bring you the comics behind the movies. I'm Sasha.
I'm producer James.
And we're here to talk about X-Men The Last Stand, minutes 10 through 20.
It's going to take me a while to not say X-Men 3.
I know. I wish they just called it X3.
You want X3.
I do.
I want X-Men 3. I don't know why. I want the 3.
Fair enough.
I think if you have a 2, you want a 3, but that's not always the case with a lot of movies.
No,
but.
and I can't really say too much. I love the Fast and Furious movies, and those are numbered.
Those naming conventions are.
There aren't any naming conventions.
There isn't.
Which is kind of the bit now, which I like.
Yeah, no, I'm glad they committed to the bit for sure.
Yeah.
But in these minutes, minutes 10 to 20, we have a war room meeting with Beast. We have a Mystique interrogation, Professor X's mutant ethics class, and announcements of a mutant cure. Oh, and Magneto speaks at a mutant community center.
He does.
And we get a huge amount of character dump. Like, I usually list what characters are in at every set of minutes. And we're not going to talk about all of them because a lot of these end up being later in the movie. But we get our Callisto for the first time, and that one gets quotes around it, so we'll talk about her later. Callisto. We get Psylocke with quotes. We get Arclight, which I don't know much about, and I haven't done the research yet, so I can't tell if she's got quotes or not. And then the biggest quotes of all is Kid Omega.
Brutal.
A brutal amount of quotes around his name.
Yeah.
And we will get to that. And those are all future episodes because that is the crew that ends up being recruited by Magneto.
Yeah.
And so we will get into them.
I did not recognize Kid Omega, who is probably one of my favorite X-Men.
It's not Kid Omega. We'll get into it.
Sorry.
Later episode. But when I was doing the preliminary run through of these movies, and I was like, oh, who's playing this? Who's playing? Oh, who's that? That guy was from Lost, and I'm like, oh, who's he playing? And I was like, Kid Omega.
I don't remember that.
What? No. Just anyway. Future episode. Get ready for that fury to come. There is one character that is like a joke shot. And so this is a community center, and people are just sitting around listening to people speaking. And this big fat guy walks up, and there's one seat, and it is way too small for the size of this fella. So he goes to sit down, and he shrinks down to a small fella, and then he sits in his chair. And I was like, we've had a lot of mutants in these movies that aren't characters. They're just like, oh, it's a thing. They get a Wikipedia page now because they were in one shot of a movie and people have named them, or they're in the credits as whatever. I was surprised that this guy's name was Fat, P-H-A-T, which is a very 90s 2000 slang for being fresh, I suppose.
An even older slang.
If I can use older slang. And it's named appropriately because this guy is a white guy who wants to be a black guy. The way he talks, Fat is how he would name himself.
Yeah.
Okay. It is commented a lot in the book he's in. So let's get into that.
Because this is such a revelation to me because I didn't know this character at all.
Yeah.
So
I didn't either.
You were just so on it though. I was like, all right, I'll leave that to you, James.
This is another one where I'm like, all right, let's see where he is. He's only in 20 some issues.
That's interesting.
I'm sorry. He's in 34 issues total. He starts in X-Force number 117.
Okay.
This is the original run from 1991.
Okay, so this is the one with Cyclops and Jean Grey and all of them?
Not X-Factor.
So, sorry,
this is
X-Force.
X-Force. You keep switching them?
I will do that until I die. This
and
is
I
Cable.
never edit them out. I always leave in your switches.
Because it just never
This is just
sticks.
In case you say it and I don't correct you. Well,
Everybody knows
could be switched. There's a good chance.
It's really funny. I should just start saying the opposite of what I think it is because it's just wrong it's insane that it's consistently wrong every time.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy.
Anyway. Cable.
So up till issue number 116, it was what you think X-Force is.
Yeah.
Okay. Issue number 117, whole new team. Okay.
Is this post Boom Boom?
This is
Okay.
this whole team is not who you think it is.
Ooh, what's the team?
It almost doesn't matter, is what I'm going to say. I'm going to start with that.
Goodness.
So here's your team.
Okay.
Battering Ram.
Okay.
Jin Genie. La Nuit. Plasm with a Z. Sluck. And Zeitgeist.
I've never heard of any
You
of these.
may have heard of Zeitgeist because he will pop up in Deadpool 2.
Oh.
But we'll get to Zeitgeist later.
Okay.
The reason I say they don't matter, they all get killed in that issue.
I was literally about to ask. I was like, there's just no way that they were like, I wasn't like a huge X-Force reader during this run, but there's just no way that they existed as X-Force, and I never heard of any of them unless they were just all dead. Like,
I mean, this is like 2001.
Yeah.
So we're not, I mean, this movie was released in 2006. So like, this is one of those like, oh, he's kind of a new character. We're going to put him in. X-Force number 116, also super interesting tidbit of information. It was the first issue that when submitted to the CCA said, nah, brah.
Really?
Too violent.
Whoa. Okay. That's not usually the reason.
This is Peter Milligan and Mike Allred. And if you know Mike Allred, he has a very like solid line, clean look style. Like if you've ever seen he did Silver Surfer run, he did iZombie, was it Madman, I think was his name. It's very like cartoonish looking.
This is very comic book. Like more like if you asked your grandpa to draw a comic book, this is what it would look like.
It's closer to it's
your grandpa's a very good artist. I mean, I'm not saying that.
So if you look closely, it says next to the number, hey kids, look, no code.
Oh, because it doesn't have the stamp.
It was the first Marvel comic book to not have the CCA code.
Wow.
So if you go back to the X-Force right before it in the corner, it says approved by the CCA, the Comic Codes Authority, which I'm going to put on my history pants for a second. The Comic Code Authority
nightmare
is it's a whole thing in itself, which basically was a way of reacting to comics being too violent and too scary and too gory. And, you know, it was like in the 50s, I think, the government went, well, we need some sort of regulating authority close to the MPAA rating movies, except for it was like, here's what you can't do. And that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
So you can't put the CC, like it was basically to tell parents these comics are okay because they have this label on them.
Yeah.
We don't have that anymore.
We don't.
And this is where it started.
That's incredible. Good job, X-Force. Because the problem with the Comics Code Authority, we should actually do a whole episode about that someday. I would love to do a little bonus episode about it.
One of these credit sequences where we don't have much to say, maybe we'll do a deep dive in the CCA.
But I just want to say the Comics Code Authority maybe was originally there to like stop from like ultra violence or whatever, making sure things were like PG, but then eventually became a way to suppress like stories about minorities and different groups and stuff, and is notorious for that.
And we sometimes have to say things are coded in X-Men.
Yes.
Like especially like in the Claremont run.
Yes, and this is why.
Well, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's pin that. Pin it right now.
We'll have to do a history session about the Comics Code Authority and why we hate them.
And why you should too. Anyway, so X-Force is so the next issue, I think it might even be the end of that issue, next issue. It's a whole new team.
Yeah.
Fat is one of the characters.
Got it.
Okay. So there's a new team. It's not a huge deal about who it is, but the idea behind the X-Force, which later becomes X-Statix, the reason why is that they were paying Professor X to use the name X-Force.
Really?
They weren't allowed to use that. They were X-Force.
Wait.
But they were using the name like without permission at first, and then were paying for the name.
Wasn't there a whole subplot about how like Mystique and her team buys out the name for X-Force?
Oh, I don't know.
Actually, I'm telling you, I said like, wasn't there? I'm telling you there is.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I feel like this whole thing about buying the name of X-Force is actually more complicated. We'll have to do another one of those too.
Well, with this one, both this end of X-Force, because this run of X-Force ends with them. And then at the end of one issue is X-Force, and the next start of the next issue is X-Statix.
X-Statix.
They are this like weird allegory for like reality television and the whole culture behind pop stars and being famous for famous sake. So their stories are about what the public thinks of them. When they have a high mortality rate, so every time so characters die regularly, and when they die, they need to be replaced, and they get replaced like auditions, like audition tapes, and like who would fit into the team in a public persona. They go to parties and are hobnobbing with like rich and famous people.
Real? Okay.
Okay.
Huh.
So like if you're into like, so it's weird because it's not like an X-Force comic.
Yeah,
like it just all of a sudden is not X-Force.
Interesting.
Right?
So like, are they kind of like anti-establishment, even though they're going to these parties?
Celebrity.
So they're just like
They're full on celebrities.
Okay, so not even like ironic,
Nope.
like, okay.
I mean, it's all like satire for sure.
Sure. But
in
on the part of the
universe
writer
of Marvel,
got it.
they are like celebrity.
Right. Okay. So kind of, yeah, written not quite a Deadpool comic, but that kind of self-aware
kind of
writing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
like Fat himself is a very much a side character. Okay. And this idea of celebrity and being famous leads him and another side character within the team. They know they're not the favorite ones. The other one's, his name is Vivisector. He's basically like Wolfsbane or Feral. He's just a guy who can kind of wolf out for a little, like a wolf form, wolf human form, I guess I'd say. Not a full on Wolfsbane turns into a wolf, like her hybrid form. All he can really turn into. So they think a way for them to get more attention is they should be in a relationship together. Neither one's gay.
Okay.
They're like, we should be in a relationship. And then it turns into kind of a real relationship. And then they both realize they actually are gay, but just not attracted to each other.
Incredible.
And then they break up and whatever, they go on and whatever. And so Fat's kind of doesn't have much to do after that. Okay. So if you're following it just for Fat, he's not a ton of this book.
Yeah, you said 34 issues, right?
Right, but that's because X-Force only goes from 116 to 129 with this crew. So about 14 issues.
Yeah.
And then X-Statix itself only goes for 26 issues.
Oh, it got canceled.
And Fat dies at 18.
Oh. Wow.
So
how does he die?
He sacrifices himself over a grenade by like super fattening himself.
Got it.
So his ability is he can manipulate the fat in his body. So he's not quite like a Mr. Fantastic. It's kind of gross. It's like bulbous and like more like anime, like growing flesh. It almost looks like. But yeah, so it's weird.
Huh. Odd.
Very odd.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, no, do you have a question?
I have so many questions.
Okay, sure.
I just like, why this team, I suppose? Like, I don't really understand why X-Statix. I mean, I guess they just wanted to do something weird and interesting.
Yeah.
But like, so much, I guess, where did they come from?
Never explained.
Okay. That's so
and all
bizarre.
of them, and I could list you all the characters. I don't think you've heard of a single one, minus Dupe.
Okay, I do know Dupe.
Dupe starts with this run. He's their cameraman.
Oh my God. Yes. Okay, so I've seen him with the camera. This makes so much more sense now. And
he is the only one that really survives this entire storyline.
Okay.
He's the only one that goes on and is like, continues being a character.
It's like the ill-fated Defenders. So only the X-Men lived and all the rest of them died. Okay, so
this may have been what X-Force was made fun of in Deadpool 2.
That's gotta be, right?
Like, I think they might be poking at this particular X-Force team.
Yeah, because the other ones don't really suffer like that.
Which if you were a big fan of this, or at least you read that one issue that Zeitgeist was in, you'd be like, Zeitgeist is on the team? Oh no, they're all gonna die.
That is...
Spoilers if you haven't seen Deadpool 2,
but
let's be honest. If you're here, you probably have.
You probably did. Yeah. That is honestly really surprising. You know, to me, it's just kind of strange, right? Because like, I just feel like there's so many mutants, like through the schools and stuff.
This book is even weirder because they keep adding mutants you've never heard of. So these audition tapes, nobody you've ever heard of.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
There's so... Wolverine shows up at one point to help out. Professor X shows up at a point or two. And that's about it. Like, not a lot of X-Men. Oh, the X-Force does show up to be like, you can't use our name.
Sure.
They pop in for a second. And they fight the Avengers once.
Okay. But like that's just
for like a 5-issue run.
that's a comic book thing.
Yeah, that's just a yeah. No, but X-Men wise,
yeah,
it is bizarre how many mutants they definitely just created for this book.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they probably were. I mean, if you get the context of this book, right, where you're like, we're gonna kill a bunch of people and we want them to kind of stay dead.
Yeah.
Don't pull any of them from any of the other books, because people who like have a favorite mutant that you somehow killed off in the side book, they're going to bring them back to life.
I think I haven't done a ton of research, but I think like Zeitgeist has come back.
Sure. But I mean,
think there's a handful that might come back. For the most part, I think a lot of them are just dead.
Yeah.
I haven't done a deep dive on every single one of the characters to see if they ever
guarantee.
come back.
But I mean, I feel like it feels safe to say I haven't heard of a lot of these characters, which means generally, unless they're in some very small, minor, they're not main characters in the books.
No.
They don't show up. And like,
This is a book that's really liked, though.
really,
This is a run that people do enjoy.
it's so interesting. I haven't heard of it at all, but I also feel like this is not really my cup of tea generally.
If you were looking for an X-Men book, I don't think you'd grab this.
I wouldn't, I don't think. But that's
I
fair.
mean, you saw the cover. It doesn't even really look like an X-Men book.
Yeah, it's a little different.
It's a strange book for sure.
I love this. I think it's so interesting. This is why X-Men is so good, because there's just like hidden corners of it. And you're just like, there's an X-Men book for you out there.
I've got one more little story from X-Statix that I'd like to share with you. And it's how X-Statix made the royal family upset.
Go on.
The real life royal family.
Wait, for real?
For real.
I love this.
Okay,
It's
so
my favorite thing.
the writer, Peter Milligan, was going to write a story where Princess Diana was slated to return from the dead as a mutant superhero.
Oof. Yeah. Not great.
The news was leaked to the media, and obviously objections followed.
Obviously.
And basically he ended up still using the same storyline, but he made it like a fictional pop star
Okay.
instead. But like even the way she's drawn, you'd be like, I can kind of see if you just made her dark hair blonde, you were like, may have already been trying to do this.
Wow.
So yeah, they were trying to bring her back.
How completely insensitive of them.
Well, Princess Diana died in 1997, and this was in 2002-3.
Yeah.
So only 5-6 years later.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I am shocked that there was an editor that was even going to allow that to happen. I mean,
it's different if it just happens, though. The information got leaked.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're the editor, you're reading it.
Yeah.
It's up before it happens, right? I just can't imagine that was going to ever go to print. Like, it's hard to explain to people who are much younger than us, but like when I tell you that Princess Diana was beloved and that would have caused
for sure,
X-Men might have gotten shut down. Like, it is a possibility.
I think you could pull that off maybe nowadays.
Yeah.
Enough time has passed. That's really quick.
Yeah, that's too early. I mean, even in my opinion, like that's too early. And I don't, whatever. Wow. Okay.
So it's not a very long run.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. There's another team called Excellent X. So it's X-Statix, X-Statix with another X. There is also X-Cellent. Excellent.
Yeah, of course.
That one I did not read because Fat had died by that point and didn't come back in that one. So
Sure.
I'll read it now, but I didn't have time to also read that run.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Do you think this is something I should read?
If you like it.
That's the question, really, isn't it, James?
I feel like if you read the end of X-Force and you're not digging it, don't continue.
Just don't go.
But it is bananas and doesn't attach much to any other X-Men. So it is it's its own thing. So that's not bad. That's probably why some people really liked it. So you didn't have to have all the information. Like when they fight the Avengers, they're in their old school costumes. We're talking Hawkeye with the big purple mask that looks like Wolverine.
Weird.
We're talking big winged helmet Thor.
Why?
I don't know. It works really well with all red style. And I think that's why.
Style looks very old school cartoony.
Yeah,
so yeah.
There's also a couple issues done by Darwin Cook, who has also a very similar style. So there is a couple artists that come in and out. But for the most part, like 95% is all red.
Yeah, I always find it interesting when we look at comics that are not in the house style.
Yeah,
because sometimes they can be really interesting.
It works with this ultra violent, very dangerous style of comic booking that they're going with. So it's not a incredibly gross.
Yeah.
But it does the violence pops a little more because it's not you don't see it coming.
Right.
So that's I got all that based on fat.
I love it. This is what we do. This is what the deep dives are for.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. Do you want to hear what I brought to the table today?
What did you give?
Well, okay, so I wanted to talk about Worthington Industries because, like, as we were talking about the Cure and X-Corp and everything like that, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive on like the movie X-Corp, and then like
because previously we talked about Worthington's family,
right?
And so we said Worthington Industries sometimes, or Professor X, like fund the X-Men.
Yes.
But we didn't really go into what stories actually had these companies that go along with it.
Yeah. And so it's really interesting because X-Corp, I had the wrong impression based on the Krakoan era, because in the Krakoan era, it's run by Angel and Monet, also known as Penance. But
also known as M.
Sometimes. M too. Yeah. Anyway, complicated. We'll get to that at another time. Anyway, so I was like, oh, okay. So X-Corp was kind of run, but traditionally X-Corp is funded by Xavier, actually. Okay. So Xavier funds X-Corp as kind of an extension of the X-Men, and his goal is to have X-Corp represent mutant rights and helps any mutant that would need assistance. So there were periods of time in which any person in these cities where X-Corp was, all they had to do was think for X, and like X-Corp would come up and save the day. The cities that X-Corp were running in before Krakoa, so this is the pre-Krakoa stuff: Mumbai, Hong Kong, LA, Paris, Melbourne, and Amsterdam. Some of that transitions, a little bit like kind of like energy for X-Corp, like with Worthington Industries. Like Angel runs X-Corp sometimes, especially in Krakoa, but primarily he's responsible for Worthington Industries, which is separate. So, and they're kind of what they do is an entirely different, like, whatever investments that they can run. So like Worthington Industries is a little bit fuzzier as to like what they're doing. They have literally
a lot of fingers and a lot of pies,
uncountable money.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah. So we've got two people on the X-Men, and there's definitely more, but at least two. At least two, because we're not even counting Sunspot, who also has uncountable money. He owned
foreign money.
Yeah, that, and also he owned I'm blanking on the name, the beekeeper suits guys.
AIM.
Sunspot owned AIM for a while.
Oh,
he
okay.
just bought them
Advanced
out.
Idea Mechanics.
Yes.
Yeah.
He just bought out AIM.
I love that. You know so much about X-Men. You're like the beekeeper guys.
You know what
and
I'm
I knew what
talking about.
you're talking about.
Yeah,
Sure.
100%. Just a small aside, funny story. They're like trying to take down AIM. The X-Men trying to take out AIM, and then Sunspot just buys them out with corporate like money. And he's
they're a company.
And he just solved the problem. And I was like, yeah, that's actually iconic. Anyway. Similarly, Angel and Worthington Industries, insanely rich. He runs it for his family, especially for like a very long time. He runs it as Archangel sometimes too.
Okay.
So in the storyline where he gets back, he has a secondary mutation, which turns his blood into like healing blood. And he like kind of reverts back to Angel, and he gets his wings back and all of that stuff. In that storyline, he is actively running Worthington Industries at the moment.
Oh.
While he's running Worthington Industries, what they're trying to do is they are fighting the PR front against the Church of Humanity.
Sure.
And also the designer jeans drug trade.
The designer jeans drug trade.
Yes. So the designer
jeans. That sounds
jeans,
vaguely familiar.
Yes. That is what we were talking about. So this is in 2002.
Okay.
So this is before this movie, but like right around the same time as the other ones were coming out. This is where people inject themselves and get like short-term mutant powers. We've mentioned this before. Yeah.
I think there's been a different. I think we previously mentioned this. So there's a few different ways I think that's also happened, because I think the mutant growth hormone was another one. But
yeah, they call this one the designer genes at the time. And what that storyline is basically the Vanisher has a separate company. He goes by Porter now, and he's in a suit, and he's
isn't his name Telford Porter?
Yeah, so he just goes by his
last name.
Yeah, and he's running a whole different company and is effectively like a drug trafficking out of Cuba, because of course it's 2002, it's out of Cuba.
Yeah.
And first of all, this is Uncanny X-Men. Let me just say, this is Uncanny X-Men 408 and 409. This is just straight up
in X-Men
stuff. And this is running at the same time as, I believe, Grant Morrison's run in New X-Men.
Okay.
But this is what's happening in Uncanny.
Okay.
And so this team is Archangel, because he's still going by that moniker, even though he's not evil anymore. Wolverine, Iceman, Stacy X,
Okay.
Nightcrawler, and Chamber.
All right.
So that's the team. It's a really interesting team. I like it a lot. Do you know anything about Stacy X?
She's like a snake lady.
Yes. She's also, they repeatedly say this multiple times, that she is a prostitute,
Yeah.
a former prostitute, etc. I don't understand. They lean so hard into it.
Because it was early 2000s.
Yeah,
and
but
that
like,
was edgy.
I mean, literally, it's just so much of the book is based on that. But in any case, that's the team. They kind of have a way that they like get Porter. Stacey X uses her powers that she is able to like kind of like feed people like pheromones and emotions, and they kind of like become blissful and they kind of lose track of everything. She corners Vanisher. She's sitting him with in a hot tub for like 2 weeks, while Angel via Worthington Industries commits like corporate takeover of his companies. They do that and they start cleaning up all of the designer gene drugs on the eastern seaboard of the United States, because they just bought out his company. And there's a great scene where he's like, Vanisher like leaves Stacy, she's like, you know, whatever, she's like goodbye, and he doesn't really understand what's happened, and she's like, you've got a meeting. And so he meets Angel and he's just like threatening him. He's like, I'm surrounded by, you know, people, you know, I've got a whole company, you can't beat me, blah blah blah. And that's when at that dinner table Angel is like, actually you should give your aide a call, and he does, and he's like, I don't work for you anymore, nobody works for you anymore. And it's like this whole thing. It's great. That was kind of what I was looking for, you know, like this kind of like corporate espionage. They're also kind of dealing with like, it's not the Cure, but they are dealing a little bit with like messing with the designer genes and human hormones and stuff like that. And they are dealing with the Church of Humanity, who are trying to like eradicate mutants and stuff. There's also one more story if we have time.
Yeah.
So there is subsidiaries under Worthington Industries. And like I mentioned, we don't really know everything that Worthington Industry does. Like it kind of
It's
is
too
vague.
vast.
It's too much. And honestly, neither does Angel, because there is an entire subplot about this company called Lobo Technologies.
Well, because when you're like a big company like that, you own subsidiaries. You
Yes.
own, like I said, you have fingers in a lot of pies. So like if you're the head of something that big, smaller shell companies or smaller like investments
Yes.
can go to the wayside. That's what your managers are for, to
Exactly.
take care of that stuff. So I
Exactly.
love this company is so big you don't realize the nonsense that's going on in a small part of it.
And let me tell you the nonsense that's going on.
Please tell me the nonsense.
Lobo Technologies, a subsidiary of Worthington Industries, they show up at a murder of all of these teen kids that look like they've been ripped apart. The Uncanny X-Men follow these tracks of these people, and it ends up being a group of like mutant werewolves. Again, they kind of look like Feral and them.
Okay.
Run by the CEO, who is in one shot of this is like in full werewolf form, but then also with a pinstripe suit, because of course. And his name is Maximus Lobo. And this is like basically a sub story called Dominant Species. That's the little like title they have for it.
Yeah.
And
the name of the arc.
They're trying to fight their own subsidiary company that are just committing murders. And it's just because they believe that like it's kind of an overreaction to the Church of Humanity and like mutants like getting kind of discriminated against, where they're fighting back and saying that like we are homo superior, and like they just kill people to show that they're better than them and stuff. And it's like, it's gory and whatever. It's not particularly, I'm not telling you this to invite you necessarily to read these, but I am telling you this in that it is very funny to just like, I'm reading all of these like, oh, Worthington Industries stories, like I'm kind of curious about the corporate espionage, and it's like, no, it's like a werewolf band that's in this subsidiary, and like there's not even much like corporate drama that there was with the Vanisher one. It's just like they show up and they're at the lab and then they have to fight off werewolves.
Fair.
And it's pretty funny. I will just say that. It's kind of ridiculous. It's kind of funny. And I just thought I'd throw that in there.
No, that's good. That's good.
But yeah, that's it. Like, I thought there would be more Worthington Industries stuff. There really isn't.
Yeah, because I mean, if you have Angel, he's usually being Angel.
Right.
You know, it's not like, I don't know. I was going to say a Bruce Wayne Batman thing, but I can't even speak for how much Wayne Enterprises is in a Batman story.
Yeah, I don't know that much either.
Because I don't know that much about Batman.
Same.
So I'm going to stay in my lane and just say, if you want Angel in a story, you're only going to use Worthington Enterprises if you need...
Industries.
You're only going to use Worthington Industries. It was Bruce Wayne's problem that I said Enterprises. If you need the money or the clout or the resources.
Yeah.
So you're not going to... So like Krakoan era, they're like, oh, we made X-Corp. You know what I mean? Like you needed it as a means to make the whole machine work.
Right. X-Corp in the Krakoa area is to manage the pharmaceuticals primarily. Right. Right, because they're distributing, they're running a company. That's how they're funding Krakoa.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts into just like making medicine and getting it to people.
Right.
You can't just do it.
Right.
You need a corporate machine to do that.
Yeah. Like Marauders is like the black market that's funded in Krakoa by themselves, and then X-Corp is the front, like the actual facing front,
that humans actually will interact with.
Consumer facing.
The consumer facing. There you go.
Yeah, there it is.
So yeah, that's
what I got.
All right. I think that's it for this. Wow. This time flies.
It really does.
Wow.
We could talk about X-Statix all day.
I could talk about X-Statix even longer. I didn't think I was going to. Honestly, I was like, oh, X-Statix? Okay, whatever, this little side story. And I started reading it and was like, oh, this starts in X-Force. Let me back up. And then I was like, ooh, okay, it starts in X-Force. And I was like, and even as you're reading, you're like, did I miss something? No.
It's just how
Here's the first team, they died. Wow. Like, here's the first mission. They've been at it for a while. Mm-hmm. You just see the first mission. The first mission you see is them dying.
Yeah, so good.
And there's more. I haven't even told you about any of the members of this team. I'm just telling you about the team.
We'll have to do a deep dive on them one day.
I don't know if we have time. There's so many other things to talk about.
Fair enough. All right. Well, this has been Sasha.
I'm producer James.
And we'll see you for the next 10.